Hello, St. Anne Parish, and welcome to this week's Quick Things video. I'm going to go through some of our survey results that we did a month or so ago. And one of the things was these videos need to be quicker. So remember, the thing is I try to get the main announcements up at the top. Some of them are reviewed as well in the email, so I'm going to get to the really quick things first. Our collection of Christmas gift cards, this is what we've been trying to encourage folks for an Advent Christmas giving project, collecting gift cards for St. Vincent de Paul. We'll conclude that collection of gift cards this coming weekend as we conclude our celebration of Christmas with the Feast of the Baptism of the Lord. So just to review, we are encouraging gift cards in $5 to $25 denominations for Quick Trip, Pick and Save, Walgreens, and Triggs. And you can buy those at those stores and then just put them in the collection baskets at the entrances at church, or you can drop them off anytime. Again, that's our Advent Christmas Giving Project to benefit St. Vincent de Paul, $5 to $25 gift cards for Quick Trip, Pick and Save, Walgreens, and Triggs. Also with this email is a link to the pro-life signature ad. If you would like to add your name and make a contribution to that ad, calling attention to the evil of abortion, that ad will be running in city pages later this month, and a link for that is with this email. Also, you can sign up soon or right now for our New Year book club. We'll be reviewing or reading and discussing the book Abraham, A Journey to the Heart of Three Faiths by Bruce Feiler. So this looks at the role of Abraham in the Christian, Muslim, and Jewish traditions. Promises to be rather interesting, and Bruce Feiler is a really nice, engaging writer. That will begin next Tuesday. Don't worry about feeling like you have to be on to contribute to the conversation or you're going to fall behind. Some people have found it's just nice to sit and listen to others talk, and they kind of read the book along, but kind of take a more gentle approach to the project. So again, you can sign up for that by sending me an email. There's a link with this email as well. And then the last announcement is that an organization called Blessed Art, they sell items made from olive wood, crafted by Palestinian Christians in the Holy Land. And they will be selling those items at Masses this weekend. Blessed Art has been here before, so just to be aware of that if you're interested, kind of want to stop in if you're coming to Mass. If you're not, you probably could figure out a time to get in before or after Mass and avoid the crowds as well. But speaking of Mass, there's a link with this email to sign up to join us in person for Mass. So we celebrate at 4 o'clock at 9:30. You do need to register in advance. All the precautions are followed, of course, as always. And also, though, if you're joining us online, the live stream is at 4 o'clock. I'd really encourage you to really be intentional about your participation at Mass. Determine what time you're going to do it. Prepare a worship aid for you, other members of your household, as you prepare to join us for Mass. You can also, you can find the worship aid link with this email, as well as a link to the readings for this coming Sunday that allows you to kind of read those readings in advance or after, but also then to kind of hear them in a different way if you've had a chance to read them before. So those are the really quick things. But the regular quick things that I'm going to move into now is pretty important as well. So if you can give this a few more minutes, I hope it would be worth your while. I want to talk about COVID vaccine and about our survey that we conducted of the parish. So first of all, folks have been vaccinated. We have members of our parish who have been vaccinated with the COVID vaccine, many of them in healthcare nursing home situations. It's going to be a while, as we're discovering, as we're following the news, before most of us are offered an opportunity to be vaccinated. But already, and even a month or so ago, as soon as the vaccine was available, questions were being raised about the moral implications of the vaccine because of how scientists created the vaccine. And essentially what was involved in the creation of the vaccine were the use of cell lines that originated with tissues taken through abortion. And some of this may have happened decades ago, the abortion. The cell lines are still being used. And so then right away, and understandably, questions are being raised as to the morality of the vaccine. Well, right away, immediately as well, the bishops of the United States have been very clear in their proclamations as to it is moral, and it is moral to be vaccinated, and you should be vaccinated. So I guess I'll go into a little further commentary from Bishop Kevin Rhodes of Fort Wayne, South Bend, Indiana. He's the chair of the Bishops' Committee on Doctrine, as well as Archbishop Joseph Naumann of Kansas City, who's the chair of the Pro-Life Committee of the U.S. Bishops. But the first thing I want to say is to be cautious of where you get information and how you make decisions on such matters. So hearing something on relevant radio, or seeing something on EWTN, or hearing something on the Catholic Channel, or in any number of publications does not carry weight. The statement of the U.S. bishops does. There are guides in these matters, okay? So no matter how authoritative someone may seem, who you see on TV or hear on the radio, they do not have the authority of the U.S. bishops on this matter. So with that in mind, I want to share a quote from the statement from Bishop Rhodes and Archbishop Naumann. So this is regarding the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, okay, which are the ones that are being offered now. In view of the gravity of the current pandemic and the lack of availability of alternative vaccines, the reasons to accept the new COVID-19 vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna are sufficiently serious to justify their use. In other words, we have no other options, and this is a serious matter, folks, and we need to get the shot. So despite their remote connection to morally compromised cell lines, there is sufficient reason to justify their use. Receiving one of the COVID-19 vaccines ought to be understood as an act of charity toward the other members of our community. Again, we do this just as we wear masks, we would do it out of love for one another. In this way, being vaccinated safely against COVID-19 should be considered an act of love of our neighbor and part of our moral responsibility for the common good. And there will be a link to these comments, this statement, with this email. Now, the bishops do kind of find more issues with the AstraZeneca vaccine. This is being distributed now, I believe, in Great Britain, and not so much here, but it may become available here. What the bishops say here is that vaccine is more morally compromised and consequently should be avoided. But, they add, it may turn out that one does not really have a choice of vaccine, at least not without a lengthy delay in immunization that may have serious consequences for one's health and the health of others. In such a case, it would be permissible to accept the AstraZeneca vaccine. So I hope that's clear for those of you who are watching this, and if you have others who approach you and seem to know a lot about this, you can share this video with them, the statement of the bishops, print it out, give it to them. Make sure you don't acquiesce and presume they know more than you do, because you know exactly now what the bishops want us to know and are encouraging us in this regard to get the shot whenever we can. With this email is a video from Father Casey Cole. He's a Franciscan. It kind of takes us into the weeds a bit more deeply in terms of the moral issues at play in all of this. I mean, you may find it very interesting. He goes into a lot more detail than, first of all, I have the academic competence to do, but also more than most of you would want. But if you're intrigued by this, I would encourage you to watch Father Casey's video. He does a nice job, but again, it takes us into things. It's like 10 minutes long. It takes us into all of it a little more deeply than we might want to go. So the question is, should I get the shot? The moral answer is, yes, you should, out of love for neighbor. Now, I just want to talk a little bit about a survey we did back, I guess it was probably in October, maybe early November. It was conducted online through SurveyMonkey. It's an online service that offers these things. And it was mainly just to get a kind of a sense, a big picture sense of where people are in relation COVID and how the parish is responding to that. And I just want to review a few of these results. You can also find them in this coming weekend's worship aid, but it's easier to listen to this, or at least I usually find it easier to listen than read some of this stuff. So here we go. First of all, so this goes out to everyone who gets this email, which is about 930 people. 231 responded, which may not seem like a lot, but that, in terms of these kinds of surveys, that's a pretty good response. So someone who said, I'm going to take the time to do what they're asking me to do in this survey. Of those 231 responses, 48% said that they had returned to in-person Mass. Now that would be much higher than the parish as a whole. Well, in some ways this survey gives us a kind of a sense of the overall parish situation. On that question, it doesn't. So more of you who responded to the survey are coming to Mass in person than would be true of the parish as a whole. 53% of those who responded said they were not coming to Mass in person. 19% of those who are coming, again in person, are coming weekly. A similar number, exactly same, 19% said that they have attended Mass on the grass. Of those who are not attending, who have made the choice not to come to in-person Mass, 53% feel that they are too much at risk, that they are in an at-risk group or coming to Mass puts them at risk. 51% said they are not comfortable, simply not comfortable in a large group, and I can agree with that. I'm not sure I'm comfortable gathering twice each weekend with a large group. But so that was identified by about half of the respondents. A fair number of others said that they were content participating in Mass online. A good number don't appreciate the precautions. So while some are not coming because they don't feel it's safe enough, others are saying, well, I don't like all these rules and regulations, or maybe in one way of saying it is that it's too safe, okay? And then, and like I said, some are saying the precautions are not sufficient enough. So, try to figure out what to do in that regard. When asked what might lead you to rejoin in-person Mass, 59% said a vaccine. So while we have a vaccine, we still haven't quite figured out how we're all going to get the vaccine. So that's still an open question. Others said they might be led to rejoin us once there are less rigid precautions and scheduling. So they don't like the idea of having to schedule in advance or wearing masks and things like that. Others said once there are more Mass times. And you know what? That's a kind of an issue of convenience more than need in some ways. So I guess I'd hope that if we're open to coming to Mass, we could figure out a way to come to Mass at 4 o'clock or 9:30. I guess one thing that in terms of my personal situation, COVID has kind of shattered all the usual routines, and maybe we could figure out a way to make Sunday Mass happen at the times that are currently being provided. And that it would be important enough for us to do that. Others said they would return once COVID cases have declined, and others said they'll come back once we start having Mass on the grass again. That may be a while, but who knows? We may have a nice warm January or February day where it just seems like, wow, we could do this. We'll see. Not making any promises. We wanted to get a sense of whether people were aware of the online Mass, and knowing that we were doing this survey online, that's kind of a loaded question, and indeed 98% of those who responded said they were aware of the online Mass. But a good encouraging number is 44%, or almost half, participate in the online Mass every week. We asked how could we improve our online worship presence, and several identified issues with technology, not the sound being inconsistent, things like that. Someone mentioned you need better equipment. Well, we have responded to that. We had already initiated this before the survey, but if you've watched our online Mass for the last couple weeks, you've seen, I think, a noticeable improvement in the video, but especially I think in the sound. There seems to be more consistency in different people speaking and the volume that is brought forth. Some folks mentioned a greater variety of ministers, that they kind of see the same people every week. Well, yeah, we're glad to have you join us in one of those ministries. One of the issues in terms of if we get to a point where there are sufficient people returning to Mass that we might want to add a Mass, one of the issues will be ministers to help us do that. So that has been not a problem, but a concern, a reality since we resumed public Masses. And I think that you're noticing at home suggests, that it is a reality, but it's only one that's addressed by more people, either those people who are already in those ministries returning or other people joining us in those ministries. And if you're interested in more information about that, just respond to this email. A few said that they have found other places where they can participate in Mass online, and more power to them. I can only presume that they are better online Mass experiences than ours, but I find that hard to imagine. But anyway, that's fine. Some said that they would appreciate if the online Mass was shorter. But then others, I think if we did that, would say, you know what, it doesn't seem like I'm going to Mass because you're eliminating this and you're going too fast, and who knows. Others want more singing, but of course, on the other hand, then there are the discouragements that singing brings forth, that we're spewing things when we're singing, so there's that tension. But we have kind of resumed singing a bit more normally, or in terms of normal songs and things, at least through Christmas time. And we'll see how things go with the number of cases and if we feel those precautions need to be reinforced. One person mentioned that I don't look at the camera when I'm presiding at Mass, which is true. And I have a friend who told me early on that I needed to look at the camera. I kind of think if I did that again, there'd be some people who'd say, why are you looking at the camera and not at the people? Because while there haven't been a large number of people, there have always been 5 to 10 people. That was allowed for us to have 5 to 10 people at Mass, and so they were here. It's not that I was just looking at empty pews, but it's also hard to preside at Mass when you've done it for 25 years a certain way, and then to suddenly look at one thing as you're presiding at Mass. It's hard to even do it here right now. So, and now that we have people in church, it's not an issue, but it was an interesting observation that someone had made. And then, one person said that he or she forgets about it until after it's begun and then it's too late. Well, no, the whole idea of the online Mass is that while we do live stream at 4 o'clock on Saturday, you can join anytime. You could join at 4:03 and start at the beginning. So you're not locked into a time. The link is mailed to everybody on Saturday. You can find it on the website. You can find it on Facebook. So don't be locked in by the time. We want you to know that it's always available for you to participate in. And so the majority of the comments in response to the online Mass were overwhelmingly positive and appreciative, and those were good to hear, but also important to recognize some of the areas for improvement as well. We also talked about communication and what are the most effective means of communication, especially during this time of COVID precautions, but I think it would be true probably long-term as well. 92% said that these quick things, videos, are the most effective means of communication. So that's interesting. About a quarter, and you could identify several, 2 important means of communication. About a quarter of the folks said the website was important, Facebook, about a quarter of the folks. 35% identified the bulletin, and 30% said the newsletter mailed occasionally to all parishioners was helpful. Several mentioned that more frequent one-on-one communication, phone calls, letters with homebound parishioners would be important, and that certainly is something that we're striving to do, and we recognize the value and the importance of that for folks who just have, especially some folks in nursing homes and things who've just been totally isolated for all these months. Finally, in terms of what could we do better or different, one person wrote, "It's not you, it's COVID." So I appreciated their succinctness and taking us off the hook for feeling responsible for any of this. And we also asked about Christmas Masses, and I won't go into those numbers and things, but it was helpful in getting a sense of how many people would be joining us for Mass and how many Masses we might need and what would be the best times to make those Masses available for folks. One other interesting detail, and it's true of polling. You don't need to poll everyone. you do a percentage of, so for example, our polling was of 231 people in our parish. I don't know if scientifically that's a sufficient sample, and online surveys are different than those where people are sought out and called like political pollsters do, but of course we know those polls aren't very accurate these days either. But one of the things you discover in polling is that your responses, you get a pretty good handle on how the responses are going to go. Early on, when the first group of responses came in, we could have probably had an idea of what the final percentages were going to be. St. James Parish in Eau Claire did basically our same survey with their parishioners. Similar sized parish, they sent it out the same way we did in an email. We had 231 responses, they had 212. So essentially the same number. And as you go through their results, they are almost exactly the same, percentage by percentage, as ours. So we're not all that different, and polling is just kind of an interesting, as a political science minor, I've always been interested in these political things, and polling is an interesting political and sociological science in terms of how you can kind of determine with just a small sampling even where people are at on certain things. So that summarizes the survey. If you have any other questions, you can send them in this email. It wasn't necessarily meant to elicit like action, like we're going to be doing something because of the survey, but it does give us a sense of where folks are. And especially, certainly grateful for all of those who did respond to the survey a couple months ago. I think that takes care of today's announcements and our delving into the COVID vaccine and the survey. I want to conclude with the blessing prayer from our Mass on December 31st. So this was the blessing offered on New Year's Eve as we moved into the new year. And we're still pretty new in that new year. So I think this blessing, this prayer is still important. In the new year ahead, may God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine upon you, and may God be gracious to you. May God look upon you kindly and give you peace. And may Almighty God bless us all, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Let us be at peace to walk in the light of the Lord. Amen.